The massive Corvanian fleet drifted through the cold darkness of space, their sleek silver ships cutting through the void like knives. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth, they called it. Another world to add to the Corvanian Empire. Zethkar's 4 eyes studied the data flowing across his displays. The planet was perfect for colonization. Plenty of water, breathable atmosphere, and rich resources. Best of all, it was inhabited by a primitive species that would pose no real threat to his forces. "Sir, the deep scans are complete," reported his science officer Veltar. Her voice carried the calm confidence that came from having done this hundreds of times before. "The dominant species appears to be bipedal mammals. They call themselves humans." Zethkar nodded, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. "Technology level? Primitive nuclear fission. Basic chemical rockets. Most of their energy still comes from burning fossil fuels." Veltar paused, checking her readings again. "They've barely left their home planet, sir. A few small stations in orbit and some exploratory missions to their nearest moon. Weapons? Crude kinetic projectiles and explosive devices. Some nuclear warheads, but their delivery systems are slow and predictable. Nothing that could threaten our shields." Veltar's voice held a note of dismissal. "They're still using gunpowder-based weapons in many regions." Zethkar allowed himself a small smile. After 300 years of conquest, he had seen this pattern countless times. Young civilizations always followed the same path. They developed nuclear weapons before they developed wisdom. They fought endless wars over resources and territory instead of working together for progress. "What about their social structure?" he asked. "Chaotic," Veltar replied immediately. "They're divided into nearly 200 separate nations. Many of these nations are actively at war with each other. In the past century alone, they fought 2 massive global conflicts that killed millions of their own kind." "Interesting." Zethkar studied the planet below. "They waste their energy fighting themselves instead of advancing their technology." "How very typical." His tactical officer, a young male named Tarash, looked up from his station. "Sir, should we classify them as hostile?" Zethkar considered this. The Corvanian Empire had 3 categories for newly discovered species. Peaceful meant they would accept integration willingly. Hostile meant they would resist but could be easily defeated. Dangerous meant they might actually pose a threat. "No," he decided. "Mark them as undeveloped aggressive. They fight constantly, but only with primitive weapons. Once they see our technology, they'll surrender quickly enough." The bridge crew nodded in agreement. They had all seen it before. A species might seem fierce when fighting with sticks and stones, but when faced with plasma cannons and energy shields, they always came to their senses. "Begin standard first contact protocol," Zethkar commanded. 3 motherships, minimal escort. We'll demonstrate our capabilities and offer them the chance to join the Empire peacefully. "Sir," Veltar spoke up, "the tactical analysis shows some unusual patterns in their warfare." "Oh?" Zethkar was only mildly interested. What could primitives do that would surprise a commander who had conquered 12 star systems? They show remarkable adaptability in combat situations. When facing superior technology or numbers, they often develop new tactics very quickly. Also, their tolerance for casualties is significant. Zethkar waved a dismissive hand. All aggressive species think they're fierce warriors until they face real power. These humans are no different. He turned to watch the planet rotate slowly below them. Cities sparkled like tiny jewels across the night side. During the day, he could see the brown scars of strip mines and the gray smudges of industrial pollution. So wasteful, so inefficient. "How many humans are there?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion, Veltar reported. 8 billion? Zethkar was surprised. Most species never reached more than a few million before either destroying themselves or learning to control their population growth. How do they feed so many? Industrial agriculture and genetic modification of crops. They've converted much of their planet's surface to farmland. Veltar pulled up images of vast wheat fields and rice paddies. They're quite resourceful when it comes to survival. Zethkar frowned slightly. High population numbers could mean more resistance, but it also meant more workers once they accepted Corvanian rule. Still, 8 billion primitives were hardly a concern for his advanced fleet. What about their military forces? Fragmented across their various nations, Tarash answered, consulting his tactical displays. The largest military belongs to a nation called the United States, but even they only have about 1.5 million active personnel. Most nations have much smaller forces. Weapons? As the science officer said, mostly kinetic projectiles. They call them bullets and missiles. Some explosive devices. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear, but they're large and clumsy. Nothing like our plasma technology. Zethkar nodded approvingly. Everything was proceeding according to standard patterns. A young, aggressive species with primitive technology and divided loyalties. They would resist at first, of course. They always did. But once he demonstrated the power of Corvanian technology, their leaders would see reason. Send the message to the High Council, he ordered. Earth is suitable for colonization. Local species classified as undeveloped aggressive. Recommend standard integration protocol. Yes, yes. Sir. Veltar began composing the transmission. Zethkar watched the planet turn below him and thought about the bonus he would receive for another successful conquest. The humans might be more numerous than usual, but they were clearly no more advanced than any other primitive species he had encountered. Within hours, his fleet would decloak over their major population centers. He would broadcast the standard message about the benefits of joining the Corvanian Empire. The humans would see his massive ships and realize the futility of resistance. Some might fight at first. The aggressive ones always did. But after he destroyed a few military installations, their leaders would agree to negotiate. Within a few months, Earth would be another peaceful member world, and its people would thank the Corvanians for bringing them. Civilization. It was all very routine. Zethkar had no way of knowing that he was about to encounter something completely unprecedented in Corvanian military history. He had no idea that these primitive humans had spent their entire existence perfecting the art of war. He could not imagine that a species might choose death before surrender. The Corvanian Empire was about to learn a very painful lesson about the difference between technology and fighting spirit. The morning sky above New York City shimmered like water, and then 3 massive shapes appeared. The Corvanian motherships hung in the air like dark metal mountains, each one nearly 5 kilometers long. Their surfaces were smooth and black, reflecting the sunlight like mirrors. Similar scenes played out over London, Tokyo, Moscow, and Beijing. Across the world, people stopped what they were doing and stared up at the impossible sight. Some screamed. Others pulled out their phones to record. Many simply stood frozen in shock. Commander Zethkar watched the chaos below through his ship's sensors. Humans ran through the streets like tiny ants. Their primitive communication networks buzzed with panic and confusion. Everything was going exactly as he expected. Sir, we're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the planet's surface, reported his communications officer. Ignore them for now, Zethkar ordered. Let them panic for a few minutes. Fear makes the surrender process much smoother. He had done this so many times that he could predict exactly what would happen next. First came the panic. Then the human leaders would try to contact him. Finally, after he demonstrated his superior weapons, They would realize resistance was hopeless and begin negotiating. "Begin the demonstration," he commanded. High above Earth's atmosphere, a small asteroid tumbled through space. It was perhaps 50 meters across, just a chunk of rock and ice left over from the formation of the solar system. The asteroid had been drifting harmlessly for billions of years. The Corvanian flagship's main plasma cannon charged with a low humming sound. Energy gathered in the weapon's core, building to incredible intensity. Then, with a flash that was visible from Earth's surface, the cannon fired. The asteroid simply vanished. One moment it was there, and the next it was nothing but glowing particles scattered across space. The energy blast had been so intense that it had broken down the asteroid's atoms themselves. "Now broadcast the message." Zethkar said the transmission went out on every frequency that humans use for communication. Television broadcasts stopped. Radio stations went silent. Even internet traffic slowed as the alien message pushed through every available channel. "Greetings, people of Earth." The message began in perfect English, Chinese, Russian, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. "We are the Corvanian Empire. We have come to offer your species membership in our great civilization." Zethkar watched the broadcast from his bridge, satisfied with how professional it sounded. The translation computers had done excellent work learning human languages from their intercepted communications. "As you have just witnessed, our technology is far beyond your current capabilities. We mean you no harm, but resistance would be both futile and unnecessary. Your planet offers many resources that would benefit our empire. And in return, we offer you advanced technology, longer lifespans, and freedom from war and poverty." The message continued, outlining the standard terms of integration. Human governments would be allowed to continue managing local affairs under Corvanian oversight. Resources would be shared fairly. Most importantly, humans would gain access to advanced medical technology and space travel. "Your leaders have 24 hours to respond," the message concluded. "We hope for a peaceful resolution that benefits all involved." Zethkar leaned back in his command chair, confident that he would have a positive response within hours. No species had ever refused integration after seeing the asteroid demonstration. The choice was simply too obvious. But as the hours passed, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic and confusion, human military forces around the world began moving with surprising coordination. Fighter jets launched from air bases and disappeared into the sky. Naval vessels left their ports and vanished beneath the waves. Missile installations went dark, their locations suddenly invisible to Corvanian sensors. "Sir," Tarash said, his voice uncertain, "the humans appear to be mobilizing their military forces." "All of them?" Zethkar asked. "Yes, sir. Every major nation is moving to a war footing simultaneously. They're coordinating their response through encrypted channels we can't break." Zethkar frowned. This was unusual, but not alarming. Many species made token military preparations before surrendering. It was probably just their leaders trying to look strong for their people. "Any responses to our message?" "Several, sir," the communications officer replied. "All negative." "Negative?" Zethkar was genuinely surprised. "Show me." The first response came from the United Nations building in New York. A human female in formal clothing stood behind a podium, her face grim but determined. "On behalf of humanity," she said clearly, "we reject your offer of integration. Earth is our home, and we will defend it. We suggest you leave peacefully while you still can." Similar messages came from every major government on the planet. The responses varied in language and style, but the meaning was always the same. "No." "Sir," Veltar spoke up from her science station, "this is highly unusual. In our records, no species has ever refused integration after seeing our technological demonstration. Zethkar studied the tactical displays. Something was definitely wrong here. These humans were behaving unlike any species he had encountered. They were treating this like an actual war instead of a simple annexation. Perhaps they don't fully understand our capabilities, he decided. Order Destroyer Escort Gamma 7 to engage a small human military target. Something visible, but not too destructive. Once they see our weapons in action against their forces, they'll reconsider. The Corvanian destroyer descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. It was a beautiful ship, sleek and deadly, armed with enough firepower to level a city. Its target was a small human naval task force in the Pacific Ocean. Commander Zethkar expected the humans to flee when they saw his destroyer approaching. Instead, something incredible happened. The human ships turned to face the approaching alien vessel. Their primitive radar systems locked onto the destroyer, and their weapons came online. Missiles launched from multiple ships simultaneously, creating a coordinated attack pattern that surprised everyone on the Corvanian bridge. "Sir," Tarash reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "The humans are actually engaging our destroyer." "With what? Firecrackers? Kinetic missiles and explosive projectiles." "But sir, they're using advanced tactical formations. This isn't random firing. They're coordinating their attack vectors to maximize damage potential." Zethkar watched in amazement as the human vessels maneuvered like a well-trained pack of hunters. They didn't flee or try to surrender. They fought. The destroyer's shields easily deflected the primitive human weapons, but the tactical skill displayed was remarkable. These humans had clearly spent a great deal of time learning how to fight. More surprising was what happened next. As the destroyer prepared to return fire, submarines surfaced around the human fleet. They had been hiding underwater, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. Their missiles added to the barrage, forcing the destroyer to adjust its shield configuration. How did they coordinate that ambush so quickly? Zethkar demanded. "Unknown, sir," Tarash replied. "But it suggests they've been planning for this type of encounter." For the first time since arriving at Earth, Commander Zethkar felt a tiny spark of unease. These humans weren't behaving like any primitive species he had ever conquered. They were fighting like they actually expected to win. The destroyer easily destroyed several human vessels and returned to orbit. But the engagement had revealed something disturbing. The humans hadn't just fought back. They had fought intelligently, using tactics that suggested they understood both their own limitations and their enemy's strengths. "Sir," Veltar called out, "we're detecting massive movement across the planet. Human military forces are regrouping and reorganizing. They appear to be preparing for extended combat operations." Zethkar stared at the tactical display in growing confusion. This wasn't how conquest was supposed to work. The humans should have surrendered after seeing their navy destroyed. Instead, they seemed to be getting ready for war, a real war. Commander Zethkar had run out of patience. 3 days had passed since his arrival at Earth, and the humans continued to refuse surrender. Worse, they were actively preparing for war against his obviously superior forces. "Begin Phase 2 operations," he ordered grimly. "Target their major military installations. Perhaps when they see real destruction, these humans will come to their senses." The Corvanian fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere with deadly purpose. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, striking military bases across 6 continents. The Pentagon in Washington, the Ministry of Defense in London, military headquarters in Moscow, Beijing, and dozens of other cities. Each strike was precise and devastating. Centuries-old buildings vanished in flashes of superheated energy. The message was clear: surrender now, or face total destruction. But something extraordinary was happening on the planet below instead of breaking human morale. The attacks seemed to strengthen it. Within hours of the bombardment, every major human leader appeared on television with the same message. The war had begun. What followed shocked Commander Zethkar to his core. Every human nation on Earth, including those that had been at war with each other just days before, announced they were joining forces. Ancient enemies became instant allies. Resources that had been hoarded were suddenly shared freely. Weapons factories that had been producing different types of ammunition began coordinating their production. "Sir," Veltar reported, her voice filled with disbelief, "we're detecting massive industrial mobilization across the planet. Human factories are retooling for weapons production at an unprecedented rate." How unprecedented? They're converting civilian manufacturing to military production faster than our computers predicted was possible. Car factories are now building armored vehicles. Electronics plants are producing military communications equipment. Even food processing facilities are being converted to manufacture military rations. Zethkar studied the reports flowing across his screens. This level of coordination should have been impossible for a divided species. Yet somehow, these humans had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine in less than a week. What about civilian populations? That's even more unusual, sir. Instead of panicking, human civilians are evacuating cities with military precision. They're moving to rural areas and underground facilities they apparently prepared years ago. Some are even volunteering for military service in massive numbers. The tactical displays showed streams of human vehicles moving across every continent. But these weren't random refugee movements. The humans were executing organized evacuation plans that suggested they had been preparing for this exact scenario for decades. "Sir," Tarash called out urgently, "we have incoming aircraft." "Human aircraft?" "Our shields will stop anything they can." "Sir, it's not shooting at us. It's flying directly at us." Zethkar watched in horror as a single human fighter jet accelerated toward his flagship. The pilot had disabled his weapons and was using his aircraft as a guided missile. The small craft struck the ship's shields with tremendous force, causing them to flicker and drain precious energy. The pilot had died instantly, of course, but he had done significant damage to shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. How is this possible? Zethkar demanded. The human calculated the exact impact angle to maximize shield disruption. Tarash explained, his voice shaking slightly. He sacrificed his life for a tactical advantage. Before Zethkar could fully process this, alerts began sounding across his bridge. More human aircraft were approaching, and not all of them were fighters. Civilian airliners, cargo planes, even small private jets were being flown directly at Corvanian ships. Each impact drained the shields a little more. Each pilot chose death over retreat. "Sir, we need to withdraw to higher altitude," Tarash urged. "We can't sustain this kind of attack." Withdraw? From primitives using suicide tactics? But even as he spoke, Zethkar knew his tactical officer was right. The humans were treating their own lives as expendable ammunition. And the mathematics were terrifying. The ground war was even worse. Corvanian troops had landed in several locations to secure strategic positions. They were equipped with the finest technology in the galaxy: energy weapons, personal shields, and powered armor that could withstand anything short of a nuclear blast. But the humans didn't fight like any enemy the Corvanians had ever faced. Instead of meeting them in open battle, human soldiers disappeared into cities and forests, emerging to attack from unexpected angles before vanishing again. They used weapons that should have been ineffective against Corvanian armor, but they targeted weak points with surgical precision. Even more disturbing was their apparent immunity to fear. Corvanian troops were trained to deal with frightened enemies who would surrender when faced with superior technology. These humans simply refused to acknowledge that they were outgunned. Kovanian squad leader named Kriven sent a report that chilled Zethkar's blood. The humans fight like they're already dead. They don't retreat when wounded. They don't surrender when surrounded. Yesterday, one of them detonated an explosive device while our soldiers were capturing him, killing himself and 3 of our troops. He was smiling when he did it. Sir, Veltar interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving reports from all ground teams. Human resistance is unlike anything in our combat databases. They're using tactics that prioritize damage to us over their own survival. Zethkar studied the casualty reports with growing alarm. In 3 days of fighting, his technologically superior forces had lost more troops than the past 3 years of conquest operations combined. How are they coordinating so effectively? Unknown, sir. They're using communication methods our sensors can't track. Some appear to be using their civilian internet infrastructure, but they're also employing methods that don't rely on electronics at all, such as written messages, light signals, even trained animals carrying information. They've prepared backup communication systems that assume their primary technology will be compromised. The more Zethkar learned about human military doctrine, the more disturbed he became. These weren't the random tactics of a primitive species. This was evidence of a civilization that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. The breakthrough came when his science team analyzed captured human military manuals. Sir, Veltar said, her voice barely above a whisper, you need to see this. We've translated several human military documents, and the implications are significant. The documents revealed the truth that Zethkar had been too arrogant to see. Humans didn't just fight wars occasionally, as most species did. War was woven into the very fabric of their civilization. They had been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history, developing tactics and strategies that no other species had ever needed to consider. They had words for military concepts that didn't exist in any other language. They studied the art of war the way other species studied art and literature. They had libraries filled with nothing but books about fighting, strategy, and tactics. Most terrifying of all, they considered death in battle to be an honor rather than a tragedy. Sir, Tarash said quietly, I'm receiving reports that human forces have begun using their nuclear weapons in ways we didn't anticipate. What do you mean? They're not trying to hit our ships directly. They're detonating them in space to create electromagnetic pulses that disrupt our electronics. They're using them as area denial weapons to prevent our troops from landing in certain regions. They're even using them to destroy their own infrastructure rather than let us capture it intact. Zethkar felt a cold chill run down his spine. The humans were willing to render their own planet uninhabitable rather than accept conquest. Sir, Veltar added, there's something else. Our intelligence analysis suggests that what we're seeing now isn't even their full military capability. These appear to be their standard defensive preparations. They have weapons and tactics in reserve that they haven't used yet. Such as? We don't know, sir. But their military doctrine suggests they always hold something back for escalation scenarios. Commander Zethkar stared at the tactical displays showing the ongoing battles across Earth's surface. For the first time in his military career, he was beginning to understand that he might have made a terrible mistake. These weren't primitives who would surrender when faced with superior technology. These were warriors who had been bred by millennia of constant warfare into something unlike anything else in the galaxy, and they were just getting started. The war had been raging for 6 weeks, and Commander Zethkar was beginning to understand why no other species in the galaxy fought like humans did. It wasn't just their willingness to die. It was their horrifying creativity in finding new ways to kill. Sir, his engineering officer reported with barely concealed panic, the humans have done something impossible. They've reverse-engineered our plasma technology. That's not possible, Zethkar said automatically. They don't have the scientific foundation to understand our energy systems. I know, sir. But look at this. The main screen showed footage from a battlefield in Eastern Europe. Human soldiers were carrying weapons that fired bolts of blue energy, just like Corvanian plasma rifles. The weapons were crude and bulky compared to the elegant alien designs, but they worked. How? Zethkar demanded. They stripped components from the wreckage of our destroyed vessels, the engineering officer explained. Then they combined our technology with their own industrial methods. The weapons are inefficient and dangerous to operate, but they can penetrate our standard body armor. How long did this take them? 6 days, sir. From initial analysis to mass production. Zethkar felt his blood turn cold. The Corvanian Empire had spent centuries developing plasma technology. These humans had reverse-engineered it in less than a week using nothing but salvaged parts and their primitive manufacturing systems. Sir, Tarash interrupted. We're receiving a distress call from Ground Team 7. Put it through. The voice that came through the communicator was strained with fear and exhaustion. Command, this is Team 7 leader Mortuk. We're trapped in what the humans call a subway tunnel beneath their city. They flooded the entire underground system and electrified the water. My troops can't move without being electrocuted, and the humans are attacking us with improvised weapons. Improvised weapons? Zethkar asked. They're using their construction equipment as weapons platforms, sir. Earth-moving machines with armor plating welded on and energy weapons mounted where the digging tools used to be. They turned civilian bulldozers into assault vehicles overnight. The transmission cut off with sounds of plasma fire and human voices shouting in their various languages. Sir, Veltar said, her voice tight with stress, we're losing teams faster than we can deploy them. The humans have turned their entire planet into a weapons factory. The reports coming in from around the globe painted a picture that defied everything Zethkar thought he knew about warfare. Human civilians had joined the fighting with a determination that bordered on insanity. They were using farm equipment as artillery platforms. They had converted subway systems into underground fortresses. They were even training their domestic animals to carry explosives. Most disturbing of all, they were targeting their own infrastructure. Sir, the communications officer called out. We're detecting a massive explosion in the human settlement called Chicago. Did our forces target their city? No, sir. They did it themselves. The tactical display showed the aftermath of what human news reports were calling the Chicago sacrifice. The entire city had been evacuated. And then massive explosive charges had been detonated throughout the urban area. The explosions had been timed to occur just as a Corvanian landing force was moving through the city center. The alien troops had been completely destroyed, along with most of downtown Chicago. They destroyed their own city to kill our soldiers, Zethkar said in disbelief. Yes, sir. And they're threatening to do the same to any city we attempt to occupy. Human news broadcasts, which the Corvanians monitored constantly, were filled with similar stories. A town in Australia had demolished a dam to flood a valley where alien troops were camped, drowning the aliens along with a human settlement of 50,000 people. A city in Brazil had been abandoned and then bombed by its own air force. To deny it to Corvanian forces, the humans were systematically destroying their own civilization rather than let it fall into alien hands. Sir, Tarash reported. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the asteroid belt. What kind of movement? Human spacecraft, sir. Crude vessels, but they appear to be operational. Zethkar studied the sensor data with growing alarm. The ships were clearly built using salvaged Corvanian technology combined with human engineering. They were ugly, inefficient things that looked like they had been cobbled together in someone's garage. But they were armed, and they were heading for Earth. How many ships? 17 so far, sir. but we're detecting industrial activity throughout their solar system. They appear to be building more. Building more? How? They're using their existing space infrastructure as a foundation. Their space stations, orbital factories, even their communication satellites have been converted to shipyards. They're stripping materials from asteroids and using them to build warships. The human ships that arrived 3 days later were unlike anything in Corvanian military databases. They looked like flying scrapyards, welded together from random pieces of metal and alien technology. But they fought with the same suicidal determination as the human ground forces. Captain Ilikor of the destroyer Vengeance reported the first engagement. Sir, the human vessels are using ramming attacks. They're not trying to win space battles through superior firepower. They're trying to crash into us and detonate nuclear weapons at point-blank range. Are their weapons effective? Individually, no sir. But they're attacking in coordinated waves of 20 or 30 ships at a time. Even if we destroy most of them, enough get through to cause serious damage. Zethkar realized with growing horror that the humans had found a way to make their technological disadvantage irrelevant. They couldn't build ships as good as Corvanian vessels, so they had built ships, specifically designed to die while inflicting maximum damage. The psychological impact on his crews was devastating. Corvanian soldiers were trained for clean technological warfare. They expected enemies to surrender when faced with superior weapons. They had never encountered an enemy that treated death as a valid tactical option. Sir, the ship's medical officer reported, I'm seeing increasing cases of what humans call combat stress among our troops. Many are requesting reassignment rather than face human forces again. Combat stress? Fear, sir. Our soldiers are afraid of the humans. The medical officer's report made grim reading. Corvanian troops who had fought successfully against dozens of other species were suffering psychological breakdowns after just weeks of fighting humans. They described enemies who laughed while dying, who used their own bodies as weapons, who seemed to enjoy combat more than life itself. One report from a ground commander named Vector was particularly disturbing. The humans have no concept of acceptable losses. Yesterday, I watched a group of 50 human soldiers attack my position. We killed 47 of them, but the remaining 3 succeeded in destroying our command post. As the last human died, he was still trying to detonate another explosive. They fight like victory and death are the same thing. But the most shocking development came when Zethkar received a communication from the human leadership. It wasn't a surrender offer or a plea for mercy. It was a warning. Commander Zethkar, the message began. The human speaking was an elderly male with scars across his face and a look of absolute determination in his eyes. My name is General Harrison, representing the Unified Earth Defense Command. We know you're receiving this transmission. I want you to understand something about my species. We have been preparing for this war our entire history. Every conflict we've ever fought has taught us something new about combat. Every weapon we've ever built has led to a better one. The general paused, and his next words sent ice through Zethkar's veins. You have seen our conventional forces. You have not yet seen what we are truly capable of. We have weapons we haven't used yet, tactics we haven't revealed, technologies we've kept in reserve. Leave now while you still can. Because if this war continues, we will teach the galaxy what it means to fight humans. And that lesson will be written in the ashes of your empire. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Corvanian flagship in stunned silence. For the first time since the war began, Zethkar wondered if he had awakened something that his empire couldn't control. The emergency council meeting aboard Commander Zethkar's flagship was unlike anything in Corvanian military history. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, fleet commanders were debating retreat from a primitive world. Sir, The resource expenditure has exceeded all projected limits, reported Fleet Economist Dralsh, her voice shaking as she read the numbers. In 6 months of fighting, we have lost more ships, equipment, and personnel than in our previous 50 conquest operations combined. Zethkar stared at the holographic displays showing the staggering losses. 23 destroyers destroyed. 4 heavy cruisers damaged beyond repair. Over 16,000 Corvanian troops dead or missing. The economic cost was astronomical. What about the humans? Surely they must be running out of resources by now. That's the problem, sir, Dralsh continued. Human resistance has actually increased over time. Our intelligence estimates they've lost over 2 million military personnel and perhaps 10 million civilians. But their production capacity continues to grow. How is that possible? Science Officer Veltar activated another display. Sir, the humans have done something unprecedented. They've converted their entire planetary economy to warfare production. Every factory, every mine, every transportation system now serves their military effort. The display showed the incredible transformation of Earth. Cities that had once produced consumer goods were now churning out weapons. Farms had been converted to manufacturing centers. Even schools and hospitals had been repurposed as military facilities. But the most disturbing development, Veltar continued, is their technological advancement rate. They're not just copying our technology anymore. They're improving it. Show me. The main screen displayed footage from the latest battle. Human soldiers were using weapons that looked nothing like either species' original designs. They had taken Corvanian energy technology and combined it with their own engineering principles to create something entirely new. That weapon there, Veltar pointed to a device that looked like a cross between a human rifle and a Corvanian plasma cannon, is actually more efficient than our standard infantry weapons. They've solved several engineering problems that our scientists have been working on for decades. In 6 months, Zethkar said quietly. Yes, sir. And they're sharing these improvements instantly across their entire planet. Every breakthrough in one location appears in combat zones worldwide within days. Tactical Officer Torash pulled up the latest engagement reports. His face was grim as he spoke. Sir, yesterday's battle in the Pacific showed something new. Human ships are now engaging our vessels on equal terms. Their latest designs incorporate enough of our technology to match our shields and weapons, but their tactics are still evolving, sir. They've developed new combat doctrines specifically designed to fight us. They're not trying to copy our strategies anymore. They're creating new ones that take advantage of our weaknesses. Zethkar reviewed the battle footage with growing dread. The human ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated to exploit gaps in Corvanian defensive formations. They used their willingness to accept casualties as a tactical advantage, making strategic decisions that no sane species would consider. Sir, Communications Officer Lyran interrupted. We're receiving a priority transmission from the High Council. The image that appeared on the main screen showed Supreme Commander Thekanol, the highest military authority in the Corvanian Empire. His expression was thunderous. Commander Zethkar? Explain to me how a single primitive planet has cost us more resources than conquering an entire star system. Zethkar straightened, knowing his career hung in the balance. Sir, the humans are unlike any species we've encountered. Their military capabilities were severely underestimated in our initial assessment. Underestimated? They're still using chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Yes, sir, but they're using them in ways we never predicted. They've weaponized everything from their transportation systems to their entertainment industry. They treat warfare as both science and art, and they've had thousands of years to perfect both aspects. Supreme Commander Thekanol's expression darkened. Are you telling me that our fleet cannot defeat primitives? Sir, I'm telling you that these primitives have created the most effective military machine in known space. They've turned their entire civilization into a weapon specifically designed to fight us. The silence stretched uncomfortably before Decanol spoke again. What are your casualties? Zefkar swallowed hard. 40% of all deployed forces, sir. But more importantly, we're losing troops faster than we can replace them, while human forces continue to grow stronger. And their morale? Unchanged, sir. If anything, they seem more determined now than when the war began. Supreme Commander Decanol studied the data flowing across his displays. The numbers told a story that no Corvanian leader had ever seen before. A primitive species was not only resisting conquest, but actually winning. There's something else, sir, Zethkar continued reluctantly. Our xenopsychology experts believe the humans are holding back their most advanced capabilities. Everything they've shown us appears to be defensive in nature. What do you mean? They're fighting to defend their home, sir. They haven't yet demonstrated their offensive capabilities. We believe they have weapons and strategies in reserve that they haven't needed to use. The implications hung heavy in the air. If the humans were winning while holding back their best weapons, what would happen if they decided to go on the offensive? Sir, Intelligence Officer Cavron added, we've also detected unusual activity in their outer solar system. They appear to be building something large. How large? Unknown, sir. But the energy signatures suggest it's either a massive weapon or a fleet construction facility. Possibly both. Supreme Commander Deknol was quiet for a long moment, processing information that challenged everything the Corvanian Empire thought it knew about warfare and conquest. Commander Zethkar, in your professional opinion, can this planet be conquered using conventional methods? Zethkar looked around his bridge at the officers who had fought alongside him through dozens of successful campaigns. Their faces told the same story his sensor readings did. No, sir. The humans have made conquest economically and militarily impossible. They would rather destroy their entire civilization than submit to our rule. And given their rate of technological advancement, continuing this war risks them becoming a genuine threat to the Empire itself. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for Corvanian military doctrine. Sir, Zethkar continued, I recommend immediate strategic withdrawal and reclassification of humanity as a Tier 1 threat species. All future contacts should be strictly diplomatic. For the first time in Corvanian history, Supreme Commander Decanol was forced to approve a retreat from a primitive world. Withdrawal granted, he said finally. But I want a complete analysis of human military capabilities transmitted to all fleet commands. No one else makes this mistake. As the Corvanian fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Zethkar composed his final report on humanity. It would become required reading at every military academy in the Empire. Recommend immediate establishment of a 50 light-year exclusion zone around human space, he wrote. Species classification, Tier 1 military threat. Reason, humans do not fight wars. They are war. Any future contact must assume they are actively preparing for conflict and have capabilities beyond current observations. Additional note, humans appear to view warfare as their natural state. Peace, for them, is simply preparation for the next conflict. They have weaponized concepts that other species use for art, entertainment, and daily life. They should be considered the most dangerous species in known space. As the last Corvanian ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system behind, humanity began its next phase of preparation. The alien attack had taught them valuable lessons about space combat and advanced technology. But more importantly, it had shown them that they were not alone in the universe. And if there were other species out there, some of them might be hostile in laboratories and shipyards across Earth. Human engineers began working on new projects. They had captured enough alien technology to begin serious space exploration and colonization. More importantly, they now knew that their approach to warfare was apparently unique in the galaxy. That knowledge would serve them well in the challenges to come. General, Harrison stood in the ruins of what had once been Los Angeles, looking up at the stars. The city had been destroyed in the fighting, but it would be rebuilt. Everything would be rebuilt, stronger and better than before. Sir, one of his aides approached with a tablet full of reports. The science teams have finished analyzing the alien technology. They say we can have our first interstellar ships ready within 5 years. Good, Harrison replied. And the defensive preparations? Every major population center now has underground facilities capable of withstanding orbital bombardment. We've established weapons caches throughout the solar system, and the new space defense platforms will be operational within 2 years. Harrison nodded approvingly. Humanity had learned an important lesson from the Corvanian attack.